Are you looking for criminal charges against Chief Rowan?
Here's what I'm going to say on that, okay? To me, process is very important.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably paramount. And you know, at all points in time, we've all, you as a journalist,
mm-hmm.
myself in my current acting capacity,
mm-hmm.
we've all encountered conflicts. And to me, process is paramount. I can tell you that when our attorney, Rowan's attorney, and the chief, we all met at a table,
Mm-hmm.
He identified, he said if there's going to be an investigation, I would prefer for FDLE to do that. So I took a drive to Tallahassee
Mm-hmm.
to talk to the FDLE Tallahassee office to see whether they would take on the challenge. The issue there was FDLE only investigates criminal complaints, and at that point in time we reviewed the documents and it was deemed that it was likely an administrative matter, so they declined. I came back, I'm still sitting with 5 complaints in my pocket. I can't just bury those 5 complaints. It's a very, very difficult situation, but I have these 5 complaints in my pocket. I have to do something with them. So I went to the Highlands County Sheriff's Office. Up front, we talk about conflicts. Up front, professionally, I said, okay, Chief Rowan ran against you, Sheriff Benton. He's expressed concerns about that. Can we find an independent party that can look at these matters, because we're not technically equipped to pass judgment, and process is important. So Sheriff Benton went to the Polk County Sheriff. He accepted the assignment. At this point in time, we should all just be sitting back and allowing the investigation to be finalized and allow it to be completed. I mean, I do have an anonymous public records request, and I shared that with Mark yesterday, because there were questions. What were you doing at the police department? Well, I have a public records request under Florida Statute 119 that I have to satisfy. Then I learned there were 2 emails. One is the Avon Park Police Department email, and another one is some other account that was also being utilized for city businesses. So we don't have any way of getting to that right now. I have been in communication with Commander Lister. He's on vacation, but it's going on 2 weeks, and we haven't been able to satisfy that public records request.
For instance, if I were to get involved in an accident and I wanted that action report from 2 years ago for insurance purposes, am I given to understand that if I go to the police department, I will have access to it, or has
you should have access to that? I don't believe that's an issue. Actually, when we properly file cases, it's actually and I may be speaking out of term. I'm going to tell you what little I know about the system. It's a centralized database. It's the same computer software and database that the Sheriff's Office utilizes, the City of Sebring, and I believe the town of Lake Placid. So that part, as far as police reports, I don't believe that's an issue.
Okay, so you're just saying selective records are missing that you know of.
I'm not saying that there's any records missing, but I have a public records request for his emails for a time period, and I have not been able to satisfy that records request. You know, how we archive emails, how we save them, it's a complicated matter, you know, and we just got to make sure that we can satisfy those requirements. And I have had some discussions with our IT consultant, Commander Lister. He's out of town right now.
When's he coming back?
He comes back on Monday, and that's going to be top priority. We want to make sure we can satisfy public records requests. That's important.
Do you see any scenario, regardless of what the investigation reveals against Chief Rowan, do you see any scenario that he comes back as chief, or is that ship sailed?
I want to reserve my answer to that. I think there's 2 issues. The first issue is the complaints, but really the second issue is how do you effectively work at that executive level capacity with the folks that had all types of trust in you, and you've recorded them based on that trust. You know, and that's a challenge. And it's no different. It's no different than you as the editor recording the owner of the newspaper. You know, I'm not saying they're the owner of the city, but they are at the highest level of government within our city. They were elected by the public, and by no means do I want my comments twisted in the sense that I'm suggesting for the chief to bury any type of complaint. However, those conflicts is what I'm referring to. You know, here we are in an executive level relationship, and you're working a case on me. You know, is that kind of convenient? Is that probably the most effective methodology? It may be. but that relationship is strained. That's why I suggest when things like that happen, perhaps the best approach is to pass it on to another law enforcement agency which has the same resources. As I said, you know, professional conflicts is something that in the public sector, just like the private sector, you have to be aware of. And you know, you have to really be conscious of that. And sometimes they catch you and you don't even realize it until it's too late. I worked under Sarah Delta city manager. I worked under Maria Sutherland as city manager, under Bruce Behrens as city manager. Those public records and minutes from the council meetings are available. I have never been, you know, I have never experienced any kind of relationship with the council with regards to micromanagement or telling me how to professionally do my job. So they've entrusted me to do the job. And frankly, Mark, you've attended most of those meetings, and have you ever seen the council micromanage you? For the most part, I pretty much develop the agenda and I say, guys, here's what we're doing. Now, are they always going to agree with me? No. But for the most part, I believe things are fairly smooth with regards to the council-city manager relationship. But we know, like I like to say, we all have different skill sets. As I've mentioned, you know, last year our utility paid off $1.3 million. It had acquired that debt for the past decade from borrowing monies from other funds. You know, this year we're actually paying off a $1.1 million streets bond. We paid off our fire engine, our sanitation fleet. We're looking at developing a recycling program. Do I think the City of Avon Park's headed in the right direction? Do we have the right leadership in place? Absolutely. Are we going through a difficult time? Yes.